Hey guys, so really quick before we get started on this episode, I wanted to tell you about one of my favorite apps, Spotify. On Spotify, you can listen to all of your favorite artists and podcasts in one place for free. You don't even need to be a premium user. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're about to listen to right now. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever they are. You can also easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram. So if you haven't done so yet, make sure you download the Spotify app. Search for Candle in a Dark Room on Spotify or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. Also, make sure you follow me so you never miss an episode of Candle in a Dark Room. Hey guys, this is Desi, and welcome back to my podcast, Candle in a Dark Room. So today I have a friend here, and his name is Zach. Zach is 27 years old. He came from a family of 4, grew up in a broken home most of his life. He was an athlete as well while he was growing up with his family. He struggled with anxiety and depression at a very young age. He was also abused and has dealt with emotional abuse and physical abuse as well as sexual abuse. Zach, thank you for coming on my podcast and welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad I got to be able to do this and kind of shed some light on these situations. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're the first male that I've had on here that talked about abuse. And I think it's so important to get a perspective from, not just females, from males too. It happens. 1 in every 6 males have been physically, sexually, some type of abuse. So yeah, do you want to kind of just start by telling us your story and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was raised in a very, kind of like you said at the beginning, like very dysfunctional family. I don't have any real relatives. They're all half sisters and half brothers. When I was growing up, I definitely had some issues with trust at a very young age, almost like OCD kind of and anxiety, right? So I would not go into my like classrooms or anything without the teacher walking me around the room, because if there was one thing that was missing or one thing that wasn't in place, I wouldn't go into the room. And my parents were always like, why is he like this? Why is he like, what is going on with him? I don't know what's wrong with him, if there's something really going on. But on the other side of that is that, my family, my mom and dad actually met. This is kind of a weird thing, but my mom was a stripper, and my dad met her at a strip club, and they actually ended up getting married, and they had me about a year into their relationship. But my dad took on all the kids that she had, right? And they were actually abused as well through the old relationships. So as I was growing up, it was a very difficult situation for me, because my dad was the type of person that if there was something wrong with me, there wasn't anything wrong with me. It was always, nope, he's fine. There's nothing going on. He just had an answer for everything. Right.
Brushed everything off.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it even would come down. I broke my collarbone seriously, probably when I was like 4 years old. And my dad didn't believe it and grabbed my arm and ripped it up and was like, nope, he's fine.
Oh my
He's
gosh.
fine. And, like before the sexual abuse and physical and mental abuse really was starting, I was already set off like I can't do anything. Like I'm scared to do anything. I'm scared to talk to anybody. I was in my own shadow. I didn't want to come out, right? Like I just kind of stuck to myself and did what I was supposed to do. I already struggled with things growing up. So I was about 6. And I still remember this like super vividly. I was downstairs, and my brother is the one that was sexually abusing me. Like literally, like he was 8 years older than me. So he knew exactly what was going on.
And he's your half brother, right?
Yes, he's my half brother. So when all this was going on, it started out with porn. Like I was 6 years old, and there was no innocence after that, right? So I'm 6 years old, and he would have me watch this porn or whatever, and do stuff to me, but I didn't know what was going on. just thought it was like normal for this stuff to happen. I like deep down, I was like, there's something a little weird about this, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's super sketchy of kind of the things that were going on, and it got bad. It got really, really bad.
So you were
Uh,
6 at this time when it started,
yeah, 6 years old.
and so
Yes,
he was about 14,
actually 15. He was 15 years old,
15. Okay.
and this continued probably until I was 9 or 10, until he got booted and just kind of left. But when all these things would happen, um, the next day at school or anything, I'd be really shy, and teachers would always ask me like, "Are you doing okay? Or is everything going all right? Is everything okay?" I'm like, "No, there's just some things going on in the house." And every time my teacher would call my dad or my mom obviously was a stripper, so she was always gone, but she also had to work a couple other jobs because my dad was jobless at the time. And my dad never wanted to talk to my teachers or anything because they kind of knew what was going on. I told all my teachers, and nothing really came from it. We were moving
You
house
told
to
your
house.
teachers about your brother?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And
so
they
you
just
did tell people.
yeah. So I would tell my teachers, but my teachers at that point were kind of just like, I don't really know what to do with this. So they would try to contact my parents, but my parents would never bring it up. They never would want to talk about it. So really growing up, it was horrible. I didn't feel safe in my own home. I didn't feel safe. Honestly, the safest place I felt was school. Like that's where I felt
Mm-hmm.
the most comfortable. I was around my friends, and it was just kind of like I hated being at home. I hated it so much. So the longer it went on, I moved up to my grandparents' house, but my brother was there too. And when I was there, it continued to happen and get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And the more I started to grasp it and kind of understand that, okay, this isn't okay. Like I was about 9 years old at the time. I was playing football. I was doing these things, and I was a very violent kid at that age because of what
Makes
was
sense.
happening.
Right.
Right. So
So at
in
this point, you
football,
guys lived with your grandparents,
it was my grandparents. Yeah. So
just the two of you.
just me and him. So my mom and dad would kind of come in and out here and there, but they were always busy with work or something like that.
Okay.
So when this was going on, it was kind of in between the position of when me and my parents were getting a divorce. So we were kind of just in the middle of everything, because still to this day, I don't know. They don't want to be honest with me. Either somebody was cheating, or I don't know. I have no
Okay.
idea.
So you don't know what happened. Okay.
Yeah, they've never been open about it or anything. So my mom pretty much leaves. Me and my brother are at my grandparents' house. It's still happening. We moved to South Jordan with my dad, of course. And when we were in that house, it stopped for a little bit. There was nothing going on, right? Like I was like, okay, well, I'm still a little cautious. I'm scared of really what's going on. But my dad was very emotionally abusive. So
If you were, hold on
anytime,
really quick, let me just ask you. So you were around 9 or 10 at this time.
yeah.
When things would happen with your brother before that, did you ever say no, you didn't want to, or anything like that? Or were you kind of just confused at that point?
If I said no, I used to get beat up like bad.
Okay.
So it was
Okay. So
more,
you kind of just went with it.
yeah. So it was
Okay.
like I either do it or I get beat up and get my ass
Right.
kicked.
Okay. So go continue. So your dad was very
So
emotionally abusive.
yeah. So after all this is happening, we move into the South Jordan house, and I was constantly told by my dad through coaching at home that I was just a dumbass, just dumb as hell. I'm stupid. I don't know anything. And if I came to him to talk about anything, he'd just blow up and literally grab me and start hitting me. And at that age, I'm like, I can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot do anything. So the person I start looking up to is my brother, the
Mm-hmm.
one that is abusing me, and I start kind of idolizing him. I want to be just
Mm-hmm.
like him. I don't know why, but I see him coming home, and he gets to go and do all these cool things with his friends, and I want to be a part of that. I want to be just like him. And so the more I wanted to be like him, the worse it got for me. Like he never wanted me around, but things started to pick up again where it starts happening and happening and happening. And one day my dad came home and I was crying, and I was on the phone with my mom, and I was talking to her, and my mom was like, what's going on? What's going on? And I was like, I can't tell you right now. I just need to talk to somebody. I don't know what's going on. My dad came home and found out I was talking to my mom, slammed the phone down, hung it up, grabbed me by the ear and said, if you continue to talk to your mom and want to cry and bitch about things, then you're out of my house and you can live on your own. So I'm like, I don't know what way to turn. I can't talk to my mom. I can't talk to him. I can't talk to my brother. I don't want to talk to anybody else about it. I became a person that I had no hope. I didn't know who Jesus was. I had no hope in the world at all. I had zero.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't grow up in a religious family.
You had no one to turn to at all.
Nobody. Zero. Absolutely zero people to turn to at all. So now I'll kind of get into like where I started to become kind of where I was covering everything up, you know?
Right. So during this time when things started picking back up again, how old were you at this point?
11 and 12. Yeah.
Okay. You basically had to grow up really quickly. You grew up at like 12, 13 years old. Okay.
Yeah. And while this was going on, my dad was never around, right? And as soon as I was done with through my brother, it was like he would go and do everything. I literally raised myself from such a young age to where I'm at, literally through all the way through high school. And I would literally eat like packets of tuna and tortillas for dinner every night. And they like, there were some like things I would eat. I knew they were expired, but that was the only way I could eat. So that's what I was eating, because my dad was out drinking with all of his buddies and stuff, right? So it got to a point that if I asked for anything from my dad, I got yelled at and I got ridiculed and called a dumbass. And like, I thought this was normal. Like, I thought this was how every family was because I was so young. Like, I had no idea. I mean, and growing up, most of my friends' parents were the ones taking care of me. You know, I didn't want to leave their house. I hated going home. I hated going home.
I remember that feeling of like wanting to sleep over at like all your friends' houses and stuff.
Yeah.
Like begging to sleep over places. And I totally get that.
Yeah. And once I started growing up and I got into my teen years, my brother actually got kicked out of the house. It was just me and my dad. So all the sexual abuse really kind of stopped. He was gone.
And this was around, you said around 12 this time? Okay.
12 and 13. But the problem is now that my brother was gone, all the emotional abuse and everything that was going on got directed towards me 1,000%. And my mom was my shelter. My mom was the person that I would turn to when these things got bad, and I would talk to her and she would talk to me, but nothing would ever change. No one would ever want to talk to my dad about what was going on. And it was so bad. I remember 100%. I was sitting at the dinner table and I asked my dad to help me with the homework. And he had these flashcards, and I've never been super smart. My whole life I've been called a dumbass. So I struggled. I was like, if I'm that big of a dumbass, why should I try? There's no reason to try. So he was going over flashcards and I couldn't do it right. And he threw it directly into my face and said, you are the dumbest mother effer I've ever met. I'm done with you. Like, I'm done. I'm like, okay. All right. So I can't go to him for help either for homework that I get yelled at every night for. So now I remember it was actually, I think it was around that week. Actually, it might've been that night. I called my mom and she doesn't answer. She didn't answer for like 2 weeks. And then she called me 2 weeks later and said, hey, I moved. I'm in Wyoming. And just split. Like, didn't tell anybody anything. So I'm left alone now. And I got to fight for myself. Like, this is how it's going to be. So now that I've been raised, I'm doing everything myself. Still to this day, I do. I struggle with my dad. And I don't talk to my brother. I don't really talk to my dad. But my dad still has this compartmentalized in his mind that he was a great parent. And he's like, I gave you everything you ever wanted. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude?
Yeah.
You know,
how long did you live with your dad? When did you finally move out?
I was with him for a while, but I mostly stayed with my friends. So I was in his house till I was about like 21, and then I moved out. But I was always staying at someone else's house or my girlfriend's house at the time.
So you were just never home. Okay.
All right, I was just never home. But going through high school, he went through his alcohol, like he was a super bad alcoholic, and he would have all of his friends over, and I would just get berated about everything, like everything. They used to call me like a fag, like all the
His
time.
friends did?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But they had no idea. Like they were constantly calling me that and like making fun of me and like pushing me around and stuff. And like my dad did nothing, like zero, zip. He wouldn't do anything. And it built me up to be like, I'm not kidding. I was such a violent person and had such bad rage issues that it was insane. Like I went through high school and I would be this, I just used to beat people to like, it just all came out in fights, and it was just straight rage. And there was times seriously that I thought, I was like, I'm either going to die or I'm going to kill somebody, because at this point I'm covering up everything that's happened. I saw my brother be that person, and I'm like, well, it looks like I got to be that person, and I got to put on this front that I'm this manly person to hide the fact that I've been going through all of this stuff. But it was a complete lie. It was a complete lie, you know. And
during that time, how were you coping with everything other than the rage and the anger? Were you like doing drugs? Did you party? Or kind of just stuck to yourself?
I got into drug selling, which was a big thing, but also with drug selling, like it came with girls and it came with money, of course. Like I had tons of money at that age, and I would smoke every now and then, but really I didn't really touch it because I didn't want to be like my dad and my brother that were always taking shit to make themselves feel different, you know? So I was always the type that kind of stood away from it, but at the end of the day, I got to eat. I got to get something in my stomach. So I started selling drugs, and I just always was told that I'm this dumbass kid that can't do anything. So why not take that route? And no one believed in me. And everyone, like, I started to be like, just super abrasive. I was always out. I was always talking out in class, and literally, like, if someone looked at me wrong, I wanted to beat their face in. And that's just like that is not me. I know that's not me, you know? And there's times still today that I'll see someone with my wife and they're terrified. They won't even come say hi. And I'm like, I apologize to them because that is not the person that I wanted to be. But the physical and emotional and sexual abuse that was happening made me turn into a person that I hated. You know, it was such a big cover up, and it was such a powerful feeling that when someone saw me, they were terrified. I was almost in the same shoes as my brother and my dad, because when I saw them, I was terrified. Right. So like, it was this feeling of empowerment, but deep down, like I was crushed. My soul was crushed. And honestly, I didn't tell anybody. No one knew this. The biggest problem is that it brought up addictions. Like I was 100% addicted to pornography. And the reason why is because I thought that was right. I was like, I was abused, so I'll abuse this. And I mean, I struggled with it. I struggled with it every day through high school, and even out, you know, I struggled with it. And until recently, like I, you know, I've been better, but it's like, it's so crazy what abuse can turn into. It can turn into addictions. It can turn into all these things.
Especially because, like you said, you were shown it at such a young age. And so at such a young age, you were told it was okay. And so, I mean, that's hard to kind of move on from something and to quit something that you've done since you were a little boy, you know?
Right.
During high school and all of this, did you ever tell your mom or dad, like, what your brother had done since he was no longer in the picture?
No, I never told anybody. This stayed with me until I was 23 years old. Actually, it was one of the first dates. This is horrible. It was one of the first dates I had with my wife. I drank too much, and I had an outburst, and I lost it. I got into that rage mode where it kind of gets super, super bad. So she drove me home, and I sat on the couch with her, my dad, and his girlfriend at the time. And I said, look, I got to tell you something.
Oh, you were with your dad too. Okay.
Yeah. So I sat him down and I said, look, my brother was sexually abusing me from a young age. You constantly told me I was this dumbass and were physically abusive with me. And it has hurt me, and it's done a lot of things. So my dad puts on a face in front of his girlfriend and my girlfriend and was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea this was going on. And not once has he brought it back up to make sure I'm okay. Not once.
Oh, wow.
But before I told my dad, the only person that actually knew was your brother, Anthony. We were driving and it was just bugging me. I was like,
well, because I remember I knew years ago, but I remember you didn't want to talk about it. It's when we lived in that West Jordan house and you'd come over.
Yeah.
And I remember we would like make comments, and I remember me and you sitting outside smoking a cigarette one time, and we were talking a little bit about it. And it was before I had talked about coming out with something, but I didn't know what yet. And I remember us talking a little bit about it, but yeah, you hadn't like really talked about it yet.
Right. And when I told Anthony, he was so great about it. And he's like, dude, like, that's not okay. He's like, but the fact that you're telling people is very brave. And it made me feel empowered. And he was telling me over and over again, he's like, you're not the victim, man. Like, you're winning this. You're constantly winning this. And that's what I needed in my life. I just need someone to back me up and to make me feel a little better. Cause at that point, I was so lost. And at that time is when I met my wife, and I called her one day and I straight up told her, like, I'm done. I'm going to kill myself because I can't deal with this anymore. Like, I cannot deal with this anymore.
Because you've never done therapy or you never did anything like that, right?
I never did therapy at this time at all. I had zero, absolutely zero, like nothing. And I remember after all this happened, and I called her and I told her I wanted to commit suicide, and she calmed me down and talked to me and, kind of got me in place. And she's like, we need to get you some help. I'm like, okay. So the first person I go to, I was talking to him, and it seemed like everything was going okay. And I felt a little better, but I started to get flashbacks, like bad. I would have fits of rage, and I would literally be crying on the ground, and my wife would be holding me, and I would start screaming like just stuff from when I was a kid, like stop, touch, or I was yelling out my brother's name to stop or my dad to stop. And she's like, what is going on? I have no idea.
You were disassociating.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that all of these things were happening. And then I went to another guy, and when I was talking to him, he actually smirked and like almost laughed when I was telling him what I was going through. And that for me did it. I was like, I'm done. Like I just
smirked and laughed, like he didn't believe what you were saying.
Yeah. I'm like, man, like I don't know why that happened, but it did. And then when all these things were going on and I was struggling so bad. My wife, Kira, she wanted to make sure I was doing okay. So she's like, we need to make sure you're getting some really good help. But things were getting worse between us. Because this is kind of going off topic, but my whole life, my dad was dating a married woman constantly. Like he will jump from married woman to married woman constantly. And so the more I got close to Kira, the more I felt unsure that this stuff is going to happen. Like this is supposed to happen. Like she's going to leave me and go cheat on me and be with someone else because I just have no trust. I have zero trust.
Right.
So combining mine and my wife's issues with the issues that I was dealing with created just an avalanche. Like it was every day we were fighting. Every day. I mean, like violent, like not, of course, like not domestic violence, but it got to a point to where it felt like it was going to escalate to that. And literally the fights were over nothing. It was over the dumbest things. It had nothing to do with us seeing other people or finding something scandal, like none of that. It was just such small things that I would blow up. And I kind of looked at myself. I told my wife, I said, the way I'm handling things, I am no better than how my dad has acted and my brother. There's just, I kind of had a realization that the things I hated most, I was turning into.
All right, guys. So if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen me wearing and repping the cutest leggings and workout gear. Well, all of that is from my ladies at Clone Apparel. The founder, Alex, was actually a guest on episode 10, Darkness Before Dawn on season 1, which was about suicide prevention. Clone specializes in apparel for every booty and boob type. Plus, they have stuff for men as well. I can literally go from recording this podcast to the gym to picking up my kids and never have to worry about them moving, scrunching, or showing my booty. They are squat proof, moisture wicking, and did I mention super affordable? I'm talking nothing over $45. They will be launching new styles, including high-waisted workout shorts this month, which I seriously cannot wait for. Check out the Clone highlight on my Instagram page and make sure you follow them on Facebook and or Instagram at Clone Apparel. That's KLON Apparel. And the link to their website is in the bio. Also, if you use the discount code Candle in a Dark Room, one word, you will get 20% off. So make sure you check them out now. You will not regret it.
So as bad as I was abused, in some part of my mind, I'm like, oh, well, I guess I got to be that way too. And therapy and things like that just never really did anything for me, because I kept having to relive it to where it was affecting me so bad that I couldn't deal with it anymore.
Because you weren't doing the right treatment to help you move past the trauma. Instead, they were basically bringing you back into the trauma, which you hadn't ever dealt with it before. So that wasn't the right, move.
Right.
So when you had started hanging out with Anthony a lot, and that's when we lived in our house in West Jordan, and we would see you and stuff, and you were going to church and you were doing, a lot of things differently. And then you kind of disappeared. We didn't see you for a few years. Can you kind of explain when things were really good with you, like when you were really close with Anthony, and then kind of how things dipped and then what brought you back?
Yeah, absolutely. So me and Anthony were great. He introduced me to who Jesus was, and I became a Christian. And that's where my life. How did me and Anthony meet?
Yeah. You
Okay,
guys met playing football, didn't you?
Oh yeah, we were like 11 years old. Yeah, we were 11 years old, and we played the positions right next to each other. He was running back, I was fullback, and we were both linebackers. And
then you guys reconnected, right?
Right. Yeah. So through high school and stuff, I mean, everyone kind of just falls apart and does their thing, but
right.
I reached out to Anthony when I was 21, and I said, hey man, is there a Bible study I can go to? Because I just need some hope. I just need something. I had no idea who Jesus was or anything like that.
And at this point, he was really promoting, because he was a youth pastor. And so he was doing all that. Okay.
Yeah. So we met up and had a Bible study, and he kind of told me who Jesus was. And I knew that's what I wanted. I was like, I need some guidance in my life. So our friendship turned into we were best friends. We were inseparable. So we moved in together, and when we moved in together, things they were super good, but my family life took a big dip. So my mom was diagnosed with cancer, from what everyone was telling me. So I'm like, dude, I'm struggling right now. Like, I need to go. I don't know what I need. I need some help. I'm still struggling with the things that I'm dealing with. And it turned into straight. I was an alcoholic. Like, I was drinking every night, every single night. And that's where things started to kind of dip. And Anthony talks to me about it all the time, of how he was like, man, I feel so bad that I was just pushing Jesus on you, saying, just pray about it. You'll get through it. Just pray about it. But when I would pray, nothing would happen. I didn't feel anything. I'm just like, man, like, what else can go wrong? Like, honestly, what else can go wrong? And then come to find out, my sister at that time said she had stage 5 cancer, ovarian cancer. So my mom and my sister, and I'm like, what do I got to do? So I was like, dude, I just vanished because I thought I had to go take care of him and do my thing.
Right.
But at the same time, I was so down that at any moment I was like, I don't care if I live or die. I don't care. Like, I'm so stressed out. I don't know what to do. And nobody can give me the answers that I'm looking for. Like, I'm looking for a specific answer, which is super weird. But I'm looking for.
No, it's not weird. I mean, I think that when you're in such distress and so much stuff is happening at once, and especially if you are a Christian or you are looking to your higher power, you're like, hey, hello, here I am. Where's my answers? Like, why is nobody there when I need them? You know? And so I think that's a very common thing, is to want a specific answer. To not get it and not to see the specific answer you want makes you lose that hope.
Yeah. So while this was going on, I actually turned to my dad. And my dad came out and was he was okay about things. Like, I feel like he really was genuinely trying to make me feel a little better about what was going on. So I would go up to Wyoming and see my mom all the time, but something was up. I knew something was like not right. So with her and my sister.
Okay.
So I would go up there and I'm like, hey, like, so far, this is what everyone has told me about you having cancer. Like, what's going on? And she had a tumor on the back of her knee. And she would never show me. I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is going on? She would never show me anything. And every time I went to the hospital, she was in the hospital all the time. And so I would go up there and she would have me like leave the room and stuff. So that I had no idea what was going on. I have no idea.
Yeah.
At this point, my sister and my mom were both in the hospital at the same time. And to find out, my mom kept me out of the loop of everything. She just kind of shoved me to the side. And while I was up there, so we had like this big fundraiser for my sister, and we raised all this money for her, and then bam, she's gone. She just leaves.
Your mom
so
did?
No, my sister.
Oh, your sister. So you have a fundraiser for your sister and she just takes off?
She did.
Okay.
She's like, see ya. It's like she's gone. And to find out, she lied about the whole thing. She took all the money for her cancer thing and dipped and was gone. And I'm sitting here like, yo, like that money could have went towards mom, or, like what is going on?
Gosh.
So like, this is the worst. I have to go up there and I have to see my brother every time I go up there because he moved up there. And I have to sit
Wyoming.
with him. And yes. And I do forgive him for what happened. I really do. But at that point in my life, he scared the shit out of me. I didn't want to be near him. I did not want to even be near him. And while all this is going on, he's telling me, yeah, mom's got about like 6 months to live. Like, that's all she's got. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't know what is going on. Like, I couldn't tell what from left, right. I just couldn't even handle anything. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing everything I possibly can to go up there and see him. But yet nothing has happened. So I'm like, you know what? I will stay in contact with my mom, but everyone else is cut off. Like, I'm done. Mm-hmm. I've cut my dad off, my brother, my sister. My mom stayed in the picture because I love my mom. But I kind of just stuck to myself. And then once I came back, I kind of messaged Anthony. I'm like, look, man, like I'm just going through way too much. Like, I'm not sure what's going on, but I went ghost for a while. I just kind of found out who I really was and kind of dealt with some things inside and got some help and, really, really, really dug deep into building a relationship with God and asking him to guide me a little bit. Because at that time, I was still struggling with pornography addiction, wanting to fight all the time in my rage and drinking. So I really asked for some guidance and I prayed and prayed. And the more I did, I honestly started to change. And it wasn't overnight. Mm-hmm. I still had issues. I still struggle. But right after that happened, once I started talking back to Anthony, me and my wife got engaged. And she really has just taken everything upon herself to help me. And I don't expect her to understand where I come from, but as well as I do, like you want that connection with somebody that understands where you're coming from.
Right.
And I always expect her to be like, I always tell her, I'm like, you just don't understand. And she doesn't. And I don't expect her to. So it's super selfish of me to put my things on her and be like, you just don't understand.
Well, it's just like you said, it's just that you want to be understood. I mean, you want to be understood. And and I get it too, Nick does his best to understand me, but he doesn't understand all of it. Yes, he understands me and he knows how to help me in certain ways, but does he know what the pain is and what it feels like? Right. Absolutely not. But I get that frustration. And I even tell him sometimes, like, you don't get it. And I feel like that doesn't really ever go away. You just have to kind of learn to accept, like, you know what, they're never going to get it, but that doesn't mean that they can't love you and they can't support you,
Right. And while I was with my fiance at the time, she really started to see the side of my dad that she couldn't see. So my dad, when he was dating these women, he would take care of their kids like gold, like absolute gold. If they needed anything, if they needed money, this is a guy that wouldn't pick me up from my friend's house. He'd throw a fit because he dropped me off and expected me to like walk. Like, he just expected everything to be done for him. And she started to see this side of him, and she started talking to me about it, of really what was going on. And she was always like, man, did your dad like physically get abusive with you? And my dad never really got too bad, but it got to a point to where I was terrified of him, like absolutely terrified. And I still to this day I am. There's just times, and I don't talk to him. We'll talk here and there, but there's just times that I'm just like, how could someone do that to your own? You know, how can you treat someone else's kid so much better than your own? And it's just caused so many issues between us. And it's caused so many issues of when I was younger that it was just so bad. I mean, being raised by my best friend at the time, his name was Anthony. Actually, at that time, his parents were taking care of me in high school, you know, all the way through high school, because my dad it felt like I was more of he just wanted nothing to do with me, you know?
Yeah. Well, have you confronted your dad at all about this, about how it's made you feel or anything since you've been an adult?
Yeah, I have.
Other than that one night when you were drunk?
Yeah, actually I have. And when I do, he does apologize. He's trying to make an effort to be better. But for me, it's like, look, man, like I've waited so long to tell you these things, but he always gets upset and leaves and just gets pissed off. So when I do talk to him about these things, he then comes back and he's like, look, I'm so sorry. But for me, I'm like, man, it's like when I do have kids, I'm like struggling to be like, I want you to meet them, because it's such a bad time in my life that I don't want my kids to be like, oh, it's grandpa. And I'm like, I have all this resentment towards him, you know. It's just,
well, it's just a trigger. It's a trigger for you to see that. It's a trigger because you know how he truly is, but you also see how fake he is. You've seen this both sides. And so that's hard, because it's like, okay, well, you were never like that with me, but you're like that with these kids. And so, yeah, I could see that being hard, because, he might come in and try to be the grandpa of the year, but is it sincere or is it just acting? You know, so I could see that being definitely hard.
And there's plenty of times, like with my wife's family, I almost get jealous because of how close they are. You know, I'm like, because if I had just anything at that time in my life, I'd be like, dang, my life would be different. But at the same time, the person I am today, I'm super proud, because a lot of people don't get dealt the hands that we've been dealt. But the fact we're still standing and be able to tell our story, I think is excellent. And, you know, I like through this podcast, it's such a blessing, because even if it's just one person that can get something from it, you know, it could be that one person that needs it. The crazy thing is that I started telling people more of my story, and it was my group of friends. I literally have told them, I'm like, look, this is why the way I am, and this is what's happened. And I was shocked that like 2 of my best friends were like, yo, like I've dealt with that too.
Oh, wow.
So I'm not the only guy here that feels weird about this stuff, you know? And, you know, it's just, it's so bad that people have to go through this and deal with it. But at the same time, it makes you such a stronger individual at the end of the day, you know, and it's going to make me a way better dad, and it's made me a better husband to understand that stuff at a young age, you know?
No, and it will. I mean, it makes you stronger. Like you said, it makes you more aware. It makes you more open, you know. But here's my thing is, because you're in a good place now, but how have you gotten with like the sexual abuse and all that? How have you kind of moved past those things and gotten to a good place where you are now? Not necessarily honestly, moved past. That might be the wrong word. More like how you coped.
Honestly, the way I cope with it is really through a lot of prayer and forgiveness. I think that's the only way I can cope, is to learn how to forgive. Because if I don't learn how to cope with it and understand that, hey, this actually happened, I would go off the rails and become that person. And for me, it's just like, I got to forgive. And I feel like I'm a huge lover. And that's the way I look at it now, is I was such an arrogant, want to hurt everybody. Now I just use my heart, and I'm like, look, I've told my brother, I forgive you. I do forgive you for what happened. And that put me in a better place.
Have you talked to him about that? Like, since you've been an adult, and what's his response?
He didn't really say anything. He just kind of sat there.
Okay.
And I think he kind of knew. And I told him, I said, look, however you want to take it, but I forgive you and I do love you. You're my brother. At the end of the day, you're my brother. I do love you. But we have stayed so far apart, and I don't really connect with him. But I just wanted to let him know I forgive you. You know, he had a hard life too, growing.
I mean, just the fact that you can even say that, I think is such a huge, huge example for people, because that is such a hard thing to do. And I know that from personal experience, forgiving your perpetrator or people that hurt you is the hardest thing. But doing that for your own family member, your brother, your blood, you don't have to do that. And the fact that you do, and you're so willing and loving about it, I think just shows your true character and your strength with all of this. And, your brother is lucky to have someone like you who's able to forgive him for that, because that could make a big difference in his life,
And that's the thing is, the more I got into Christianity, the more I was like, I got to learn how to forgive people. I really do. Like, that's just a part of who I am now. I'm not that same person.
Because if you don't forgive people, you're not going to be able to move on. And that's what I always tell people. And people always ask me that, like, we need to talk about forgiveness. With my stepdad, I don't love him. I don't, forget what he did or anything, but I had to come to a point where I forgave him and had to let it go, because all it was doing was holding on to bitterness and pain in my own heart. And that, and like for you, same thing. You had that anger towards your dad and your brother for so many years. All it did was cause you pain, you heartbreak, your anger, your sadness, everything you were dealing with. I mean, they were still out there living their life the way they wanted to live it. And the only one it was affecting was you. So for you to get to that place now and be in that place, it turned your life a complete 180, because you did choose to make that choice.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, I'm still trying to forgive my dad. It's harder for me which is weird. It's harder to forgive my dad than it is to forgive my brother. And I think that's because he's
your dad and he was supposed to protect you, I think.
Absolutely. And not only that, it's more of like, so you're going to treat, like, I've seen the 8 faces that you wear, and it's like you treat other kids so much better than you treated me. And it's just like a big slap to the face, So when he says sorry,
because it makes it obvious that he's capable of doing it. And the fact that he didn't, it's like, well, what the hell? And then you can't help but look at yourself and be like, what the heck was wrong with me that you couldn't treat me that way? And so I could totally, I don't blame you for still having some resentment and anger towards that. That'd be hard.
And I'm still to this day, like he called today, and I'm going to be the first one to say I hit the ignore button, because I'm struggling still with him. I still have struggles. And
you're going to have days.
Yeah.
You're going to have days where, maybe one day next week he'll call and you'll be like, it's okay. I feel strong enough to talk to him today. And then there'll be other days where you're just like, F you. Like, I want nothing to do with you right now. And you have every right to feel those feelings. And, he kind of lost that right to kind of fight you on that. You know what I mean? And so I think that's perfectly okay.
I think the hardest part of that too is he's a very good manipulator. There's been times where I've talked to him about the issues I've had with him, especially, and somehow it turns back to being, my fault about things. And I believe it,
Not accepting any responsibility.
And I think a big part of me, I told my wife the other day, actually yesterday, we were coming home from the grocery store, and I said, I think I'm just at the point of just cutting him off. I love my dad. He's my dad, but I just can't deal with it anymore. It literally has caused me so much stress and anxiety and depression that I just don't feel like I'm enough,
Well, I feel like what I could see and what we've talked about in the past, and even from my own experiences, I could see that being like, okay, you're taking 10 steps forward to be in this good place, this good state of mind, to be, in a really good place with God, a good place with your wife. And then you talk to your dad and it's like, damn, you just took 6 steps back every single time. And I think that's a lot of people who've been through trauma with their parents. I think that's a huge, huge thing, because you get excited and proud of who you are. And when you don't get that validation from your parents, and instead you get old behavior, like him acting the way he used to with you, or acting like it's not a big deal that you're doing as good as you are now, or whatever it is, you feel like you just got pushed back down and you're this big again. You know what I mean? And you're just this tiny little thing now. And so it messes with you. It totally mind screws you in your head, where you're just like, wow, that was pointless. I was feeling really good until that conversation,
Yeah, I mean,
and so
there's times.
I get that.
Yeah, there's times where I could have the best day ever, and then I see my phone ring and it's my dad, and I'm like, oh, man.
Instant rage and instant like,
Yeah, like I could be driving and listening to music, feeling good, like I feel close to God. I'm cool and I'm chilling, and then he calls and I'm like, I just lose it. I'm like,
you're like, screw everything.
Yeah, I'm like, I hate this. But yeah, it's been a super long journey, but I really am. I'm super proud of the man I've become and lover I've become, instead of being a person that wants to hurt everybody.
You're not
you
full
know,
of anger anymore. You're full of love, and I think
yeah,
that's great. And
yeah,
and instead of following the cycle, Zach, you're breaking the cycle, and that's a huge thing. You know, I talk to the people I coach on trauma, and we talk about that, breaking the cycle. Your dad was probably abused. Your mom was probably abused. So then they did the same thing to you, and then their parents probably did the same thing to them. They all were doing it. It's a cycle. But you came in, you decided to put your dedication into, you know, following your higher power, into God, praying, into helping, you know, getting your anger under control, doing the steps that you needed to take to get to where you are now. And now, yeah, you don't have kids yet, but when you do have kids, you now know what the cycle is, and you're breaking the cycle. You now know how you don't want to be. You know you don't want to be angry, and so you don't want to tell your kids that they're a piece of shit, or that they're not smart, or if anything, you're going to do the complete opposite. And I'm the same way. You know, my stepdad was very verbally abusive as well. And I, on a regular basis, I'm almost that annoying mom where I constantly tell my kids, you're perfect, you're smart, you're brave, you're beautiful, you're, you know, all those things, to where it's almost annoying, but to the point where now my kids think that they're the shit, because, and it might be kind of annoying right now, but you know what, when they grow up, they're going to be confident because they were never told that they're those mean affirmations. You know, I've done an episode on bullying before, and bullies that we carry on our entire lives, 90 something percent of them come from the household we grew up in. So you grew up with negative affirmations to yourself, the negative self-talk to yourself, the labels that you carried on like a scarlet letter, you carried those your entire life because that is what you were told your entire life. And again, once you finally had to let go of those words and those labels that people put on you, is where you're kind of starting to get to where you are now. You're not a piece of shit. You're not a dumbass. You're smart. You're becoming successful. You've got a life. You're getting your shit together. You know, you've got your marriage. You're getting your life together in a way that you never thought that you would have, because of the way your dad talked to you. And if anything, it's screw you. I'm going to do opposite of what you said I was going to do. I'm going to be the husband and father that you weren't. Now that's what I'm going to be, you know? And I just think it's important. And it's something that breaking the cycle is such an important thing at starting over. It's such an important thing to start over, especially for your own children, because again, it easily can be passed down. Those type of triggers and those type of emotions and those type of things could be passed down. But I'm super proud of you for kicking that in the butt now and really like taking the work. And like you said, are you going to be like perfect and all of a sudden everything's going to be better and you're going to be fine? No, you're going to have to deal with your PTSD. You're going to have to deal with your flashbacks. You're going to have to go through some therapy again at some point with someone that you trust. You're going to have to do those steps to continue down a healthy road. But the fact that you are where you are now is just, I mean, it's a huge step. So keep doing what you're doing, Zach, and keep praying to God and keep following your higher power and reach out to people, talk about it. You know, don't hold it in, because I think that was another big issue, is you held things in for so long until when you exploded, it was a volcano and it couldn't be stopped because you were holding it in for so many years. You were a punching bag for more than one person. And so the fact that now when people look at you wrong, what do? You used to, what did you used to do? You used to freak out because that's just what you were doing. You didn't have control in your own home, but you had control outside of your home. So that's where you tried to take control. And Anthony was the same way. And I only say that, he'll have to tell his story one day, but Anthony will tell you himself, and he dealt with anger because of his abuse. And I mean, he would go out to like parties or whatever. And I'm not kidding. Somebody would look at him wrong and they'd be blowing balls at each other. And I mean, you forget it. Like it was just a mess. He'd be getting called, I got in a fight. And it's like, things like that. But until he finally had to let go of some of that anger, that's the only reason why he was able to move past that. And I think that's definitely what you've had to go through.
The older I've gotten too, like I've noticed like anger is such a weak emotion, man. Like it's so easy to get to and it's so easy to just lose all control, but it really takes an adult and it takes a man to really be like, okay, like I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to think about what I can do better, Yeah. And, at the end of the day, I really want to be okay to come to terms with my dad, especially because at the end of the day, he is my dad and I do love him, but I'm glad I am the person I am. And, I've turned out to be I feel like a very good husband and good friend. And, you know, I think at any time in my life it could have turned bad, but really, like, no lie, without Anthony and your family and, you know, even your story and your guidance, I don't know if I would be where I'm at today, you know? So it's very appreciative of what you guys have done for me, you know?
Well, thank you. And I'm glad, I mean, you know, we're all here for you and you have a really good support system now. And I'm really proud of you for wanting to do this and wanting to talk about this. Cause like I said, when I introduced you you're the first male that's wanted to do this. I had another male that talked about mental health, but to talk about the actual abuse itself, I haven't had anyone. So that's super brave of you. And I'm really glad that you're using your voice now to want to make a difference, to stop it, because it's something that needs to be heard. I was looking at statistics, and 1 out of every 10 rapes are male. And I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of like abuse to happen to a man. And about 3% are American men. One in 33 have experienced an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. Like, that blows my mind because it's not talked about like that. You know, I know it's out there and I know it is, but the fact that it's not talked about as much blows my mind. And you know, everyone knows that women are a lot more subjective to being victims, but the statistics of men are so high as well. And so, I think it's just super brave, and I really commend you for wanting to talk about it. And it's something that needs to be talked about more so it can be stopped. And I think a lot of men a lot of boys, men that listen to this, I hope that they, if it's happening in their home by a loved one, you know, whatever, I think that's another common thing. It's usually a brother, an uncle, or grandpa, somebody like that in the family, because it's easy, it's accessible. And so, again, if you're listening to this and you're in that situation, it's okay to ask for help. It doesn't make you less of a man. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you any of those things. It's okay to ask for help in those situations. And, you know, I'm sad that you didn't ever get that help and you never were protected in that way. But I'm also really happy and proud of how you've handled it. And now just continue to be a voice, and, you know, you can use this to help others one day. And I think that that's kind of the road that you're going on, is to make a difference with your story. So,
like I said, I really appreciate it. And, you know, I don't tell you enough, but I'm super proud of the person you've been through. You've been through hell and back, and, you know, you really are an inspiration for me as well. And I hope you know that.
Thank you. So. No, I do. Thank you so much, Zach. I appreciate it. Well, you guys, if you want to contact Zach, if you maybe want to talk to him about experiences you had, you can go to my Facebook at Candle in a Dark Room and let me know, and I will give you Zach's information and you can reach out to him as well. Zach, again, thank you for coming on and being open and honest. And if you guys have any questions that you have for him as well, we could do maybe a question like live Q&A one day or whatever. So just make sure you send me a message on at Candle in a Dark Room. Make sure you're following my page, and I hope we will talk to you guys soon.